dear to my heart. He's my big brother, Paul T. McKinney Jr.
All right, let's give him a round of applause.
A lot of other things.
Good evening. It is my pleasure to stand before you this evening to introduce our guest speaker. Brother John D. Berry Jr. is a great friend of mine, and I'm very privileged to be able to introduce him to you. I want to let you know that he is our state representative for District 90. He has been serving in that capacity for well over, I shouldn't say how long in my age, but he's been there quite a while. He was just reelected. He was the incumbent, was just reelected in the last election in August, and I know he's still up there serving and doing an absolute fabulous job. I wanted to take this opportunity to introduce him as one of the elders here at Parker Village Church of Christ. We've asked John to come back and conduct our gospel meeting. He is a tremendous evangelist and gospel preacher. And so he'll just give you a little bit tonight. I'm going to ask him to be short because he is a preacher. But on next week, we're going to turn him loose October the 7th and the 8th. And he'll be back to conduct our gospel meeting. And we're just tremendously pleased to have him to come back for us. I think you will enjoy him this evening as he will bring something for, of course, the family and the community. It's always my pleasure to introduce you and present to others John D. Berry Jr.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I appreciate the opportunity to be here this evening, and I know that you've had a good meal, you've had some good fellowship. I was told that the district attorney stopped by earlier, Amy, and I didn't get a chance to speak with her, and I know there are other officials who have also been here, and I appreciate the proclamation from Mark, from Mayor Luttrell, and I'm sure that you've received, Reginald has received calls and well wishes, and the congregation has, and other officials of the organization has from folks around the city. So I'm just happy to be here this evening, and I appreciate the fact that you have invited me to be with you. I do serve District 90. I'm finishing up 18 years, so it's been a long time. And the last election was rather difficult. I hadn't been challenged in a long time, and I had to get out and walk from door to door in 100-degree heat to get reelected. So I don't know how much longer I'm going to do this. My old flat feet aren't as young as they used to be, so I can't do some of the things I used to do. But I enjoy it now because of some of the things that I get a chance to do, and that is to affect those issues that you're working with, and many others are working with, and those that come to Nashville know that I chaired Children and Family for about 10 years, and that committee works with all of these various issues. The fact of the matter is, at some point in time, all of us are going to have to make a decision on some things, and you know, this being Family Day, I remember very well sitting down with my family every day at 5 o'clock. My mother had dinner ready at a certain time. When my dad came home, I had dinner was on the table. And of course, me and my brothers and sisters would have a biscuit contest every day to see who could eat the most biscuits. My mama made the most wonderful biscuits that you ever tasted. And the dinner was on the table, the conversation was there, and it was one of those things that made us a cohesive group. Because as already been said, God made the family. The government didn't dream up the family. And no organization put together that unit. This is a unit that God decided was going to help society do well and to make it. Now, I remember my Big Papa. Big Papa was Brother Garrett. So Brother and Sister Mary Garrett are my great-grandparents. And they, am I moving around too much?
No, you good.
They're my great-grandparents. And my great-grandparents were the children of slaves. They were like out of the storybooks. Big Papa had that white nappy hair. He had huge hands. He was a big man. He had built a house that was there and still stands there at 1464 East Mallory Avenue with his own hands. And that was on one side. Now, Mother and Papa Stalin, as we call them, Brother and Sister Hall, lived on the other side, and Brother Hall couldn't read and write. He could cipher, and he knew his name, and he knew his alphabets. And if you didn't know he couldn't read and write, you couldn't tell by the way he talked, because he spoke as an intelligent man, and he could look at schematics and about fix anything. In the middle was my mama and daddy, John and Pearl DeBerry, who were the first generation, had the first generation of children that were born in Tennessee, because all three of my parentage were born in Mississippi. The fact of the matter is, they have a whole lot less. Brother and Sister Garrett had limited education. She had a little bit of an education. I think she said 2nd or 3rd grade. He had none, because he plowed mules in the field. Papa Stalin, Brother Hall, had no education. He started plowing mules before he was 10 years old, and he never went to school. Madia, as we call her, Sister Hall, had a high school education, a music education. She was a pretty sophisticated woman and kept their house as a sophisticated place. My parents had schooling. My dad had college. My mom had high school. And the fact of the matter was, each generation did a little bit better. Their expectations for us were not that we achieve what they achieved. Their expectations for us were that we go higher, and that we stand on their shoulders and the sacrifices that they had made, so that we can do a whole lot better. Now, somewhere along the line, I don't know what happened, but I do remember when there was a time when in the African-American community, to where it was not the statistics that are quoted from time to time, that I hear quoted in Nashville, that I hear quoted at City Hall, at the County Commission, that I hear quoted at the Health Department, that I hear quoted down at the Justice Department, down at the Glamour Slammer, and all around. I know for a fact that those statistics weren't quoted 40, 45, 50 years ago. Not in the black community they weren't. Because, you know, a lot of the children hear us say this, and they act as though it's just some kind of fairy tale or pipe dream, that when the street lights came home, the streets cleared of children. And that's just the bottom line, because everybody, I could go to Miss Pearl, Miss Reed, Miss Brown, and on down the street, every one of them knew Nick. They called me Nick. And if I was out on that street that would say, Nick, you need to get home, I'm going to call Pearl, I'm going to call Mary, or I'm going to call Susie. And you knew to get your behind on to the house, or you were going to be in trouble. There was no argument if an adult called the house as to why are you talking about my child. There's a whole lot of ridiculous stuff that we have included in our culture and call it culture, and it's not culture, it's crazy. And at some point we're going to have to take the bitter pill that a lot of the things that we've accepted on ourselves and brought up on ourselves have absolutely nothing to do with our race, our ethnicity, our gender, our religion, or our tradition. It has to do with the ridiculous and ignorant stuff that we have picked up and have allowed to perpetuate and penetrate inside of our families, and that was messing up our children. When you got more black kids, when you got more young men in jail than you got in college, that's a ridiculous statistic. When you have homes that are not really homes, they're fueling stations. They're places where folks go to grab some bread and some water and lay their head down till they get up and go back into the street again. Somewhere along the line, we've got to go back to the basics. We've got to go back to the things that sustained us before we became as wealthy as we are. You see, we've got all kinds of stuff. We got nicer houses than Big Mama had. We got nicer cars than they had. I remember Big Mama standing on the bus stop down there at Mallory and what was called Bellevue. It turned into Elvis Presley, but it's Bellevue. And she would stand at that bus stop and go downtown. You go to Three Sisters and Shaneberg's. I remember all those stores that she used to go to. But the fact is, they would come home and they raised us with sophistication. And they raised us to be mannerable, to have morals, to have principles. And all the things they gave us had nothing to do with the size of their house or their bank account. It had to do with the size of their faith, their intelligence, their intuitiveness, and what Big Mama used to call mother's wit. That they taught us how to think, and they taught us how to survive. Now we got a whole bunch of junk, a whole bunch of stuff. We got bigger houses, faster cars. We got our children, they got gold around the neck, gold in the mouth, and they got nothing in their heads. At some point, we got to stop trying to give our children what we didn't have and start giving them what we did have. Now, these are the issues that I talk about all around the country, because it's not just Memphis. It's all over. It's everywhere. And organizations like this are going to have to intervene and jump into the fray, jump into the battle, say the things that have to be said. People like yourselves who know the difference, who can see. You're going to have to be the change agents that do everything you can to help fix these problems, because they're not going to fix themselves. They're going to get worse if there's not going to be enough guns, locks, alarms, or police on the street to save you from this generation that's going to come up if we don't catch them and change them quick. When you got children that can look you in your eye, turn a gun to the side, shoot you between your eyes, and sit on your body and eat a cheeseburger, we got something real wrong in our society. Because we have not trained their conscience, we have not taught their inner man, and we have not done what we need to do to see to it that they have respect for women, for men, for families, for life itself. And they have no respect, most certainly, for themselves. So, what's the answer? Keep on talking about it like we do? No. The answer is, first of all, stop making excuses. That's the first thing we got to do. Well, you know, they just want to get these boys caught up in the justice system. Oh, you know, they're just building jails for our boys. Oh, you know, they're just getting policemen running around. You know, if you raise your boy, at a certain point in time, he's going to be home under lock and key and under your supervision, and not on the street to where he's subject to being mistreated or having justice against them or any of those things. All we got to do is start doing what we used to do, raise our children. Raise our children. That's what we got to do, raise our children. I don't understand the problem. If you have them, raise them. It's as simple as that. And then we want to say, well, you know, folks talk about us. Well, they're not talking about you. What people do is they point out the glaring and blatant inconsistencies in the things that we say. If we're proud of who we are, then act like it. Make sure that what you send to the future to represent you represents you properly. You see, children are about 25 to 30% of the population. But they are 100% of the future.
Yes, sir.
They're 100% of the future. That's what they are. That's what this little beautiful young lady is. She is the future. What's our responsibility? Prepare the future. I've got 2 grandchildren, Aubrey and Alyssa, by my oldest daughter, Shabika. Those children, when I look at them, I say, okay, these kids, like my 2 daughters, I realized when I was raising my daughters, I'm raising my grandchildren's mama. So I want to raise a good mama for my grandchildren. And I have grandchildren now. Those grandchildren are my ambassadors, because I want to send them to a time that I won't see. Time's going to come that I'm just a dusty picture on the mantle. Their children are going to say, who is that? They're going to say, oh, that's Papa. What kind of man was he? He was a good man. He was this. He was a preacher. He was a politician. I want them to say good things about me. So what I want to do is raise them so that when I send them to a time that I will not see, that they will represent me well. Don't you want to do the same with your children? What we have to do is get that word out, because I'm preaching to the choir. Y'all raise your children. The people in this room are not the problem. We know where the problems are. At some point, we got to call people to account. Stop letting them make excuses. Stop letting them talk about poverty and I'm not educated and my mama was on drugs and all of that. You know what? You got a story. I got a story. All God's children got a story.
Amen.
At some point, nobody cares about the story. Nobody cares. What I find out more and more with every session that I'm in Nashville, and the 9 sessions that I have been there, folks care less and less about the story. All they want to see is the results. They say, and this, whether you agree with it or not, say we spend X amount billions of dollars on education. We spend billions of dollars on the war on poverty. We spend billions of dollars on the war on drugs. What a lot of folks do is draw the line and say, say, see, we've made the investment. Why are we not seeing the changes? Why are we not seeing the results? That's all they want to see. They've got their own problems. They don't want your problems. And they don't have time to chase you because you're black. You follow what I'm saying? So we need to get all that foolishness out of our head. They got their own lives to live. We put ourselves too often in jeopardy to those individuals who may have bias and prejudice, who will do things that are wrong and violate the law. That's why we have to teach folks to be smart. I knew that I was black. My folks didn't tell me that I wasn't black. I knew I was black. I understood the rules back when there was segregation. I understood that because I was taught those things. Now, the fact of the matter is, when we look at things factually and we train our children to look at things real, I want my grandchildren to know, yes, you're African American. Yes, you're going to good schools, but it wasn't always like this. I remember those guys marching downtown with the I Am a Man signs. I remember them because we were there. I remember when King made his last speech. I remember that speech because he was there. I love the way things are now, but I'm not going to forget where we came from. A lot of us have forgotten where we came from, and that's why we're not going where we ought to go. I would hope that you will continue to do what you're doing, to look these young men square in the eye, eyeball to eyeball, and tell them stop making excuses. Look at these dads who are not acting like fathers and tell them to stop making excuses. Y'all go to these homes where folks are not acting like parents and tell them to stop making excuses. And just let's stand up and take care of business like we ought to. Jerry Clower is a country comedian, and some of y'all might know him. I lived in the country long enough to like a lot of country stuff. And Jerry Clower tells a joke. He says that there were two guys out in the country, and they were sitting in two different houses about a mile apart. And he said one guy, old Clem, was sitting there, and he heard dog howling, oh, oh. And Clem sat there, he had a hard day plowing, had his boots kicked off and his overall straps pulled down, trying to enjoy the cool breeze. Dog down the road just hollering, oh. Clem finally had enough. Got up and walked barefoot down the dirt road to Bubba's house. Got to Bubba's house and Bubba, what's wrong with your dog? Bubba said, ain't nothing wrong with it. Then why are you hollering like that? Oh, ain't nothing wrong. He just sitting on the nail. Said, well, why don't you get off the nail? Say, he'll get off first. It just ain't hurting him bad enough yet. I love that story. Because you know what it does? It sounds like a bunch of us. We always howling, oh, about this, and oh, about that, and oh, this wrong, and oh, that wrong. When it's going to hurt us bad enough to get off the nail? At some point, we got to get off the nail, stop complaining, stop pointing fingers, stop making excuses, and just fix the problem. We can do it. You have the expertise, the professionalism, the organizations, you have the assets, you have everything you need to fix the problem. It takes the will, the determination, and the courage. I know you can do it. Keep on doing what